Welcome back to our video series featuring commentary from our expert panelists that participated in our webinar looking at communication challenges and learnings from COVID-19. As Australia's leading telecommunications company, Telstra had faced quite a challenging time in ensuring its service delivery as it had to contend with fires and floods and then restrictions from COVID-19. Despite these challenges, Telstra's Head of Communications, Nicole McKechnie, shares with us how the company's reputation score increased at this time.
A couple of things just specifically about COVID, and I'll circle back on that at the end. I was just saying to the guys before, I'm in week 12 of working from home from Telstra. So we basically tipped out our whole organisation to work from home around about the middle of March because we can, and we're well practiced at it, and we work from home as a matter of course anyway. So again, I'll come back to that in a second. I think the other thing about COVID, very different to any other crisis that I've ever been in. And as Peter said, I've been with Telstra for 8 years. I was at VicPol before that for 5 years, so I've had my sort of fair share, and in politics and a whole range of things, so I've had my fair share of fun and entertainment, is that this is the first crisis that you've had to manage as a communicator, but also live through it, and live through the emotional impacts and the psychological impacts and a very different way of working. So in any other crisis, you are removed from it, but for this one, you're very much part of it. So I think it was a very interesting place to be in trying to think through how you managed it. For Telstra, and again, I'll touch on this at the end. For Telstra, we're an interesting company because connectivity is critical. You know, we're on doing this Zoom conference today because of the connectivity that we've got through both broadband and mobiles, etc. And so we play a really critical role in the community. And so there's lots of pros and cons to all of that. But let me come back to COVID in a second. I think, Peter, you raised the issue about Telstra's reputation. I think we have had a really sort of, challenged time over the past few years. And it really wasn't until about 2018, middle of 2018, when we reset our strategy and as a company that we were able to really try and take back the agenda in terms of what we were trying to do, how we were trying to change as a company. And we've had a checkered history because we were government owned, and all of the history that goes with that. And Peter, you know that better than we all do, and the share price issues and a whole range of things that I think meant there are a lot of people in the community who highly scrutinised us, and quite rightly, but it really did put us in an interesting position as an organisation. So as I said, it was about the middle of 2018 where we introduced a new strategy, our Telstra, our T22 strategy. And alongside of that, from a reputational perspective, we really decided we needed to change the way that we showed up and as an organisation, and how we talked, how we engaged. Sorry, my dog's just wandering around in the background. This is the working from home benefits. How we talk, how we showed up, how we're a lot more proactive, because there's sort of this notion that when you're under fire as an organisation, sometimes it's better to keep your head down. And we decided to actually move away from that sort of traditional notion and really, in a sense, took the philosophy that that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So we might as well try and get out on the front foot a lot more than we had been previously, and try and take back some of the agenda, talk a lot more to our customers, etc., and to the communicate and communicate differently. So we've started to communicate a lot differently on our service disruptions and things that perhaps don't go as well. We're trying to come across and be a lot more human in the way that we're connecting with our customers and the community, and we really started to ramp up the engagement externally through our CEO and others. So as I said, we don't have time to go into the specifics of what we did. I think one of the other things we did is really decided to advocate more strongly on and confidently on issues that were important to us, and also issues important to the nation as well, because we feel that we've got a leadership role to play. And that really came through at the beginning of the year. So we did, like a lot of other organisations, deal with bushfires initially, and we had a fairly quick and swift response to that externally, where we provided free mobile phone bills for the volunteer firefighters and other volunteers as well, where we provided data to those in impacted areas, where we provided free calls from phone booths, etc. And it makes my job easier when you work for a company that actually believes that as a responsible business, they're the right things to do. And in discussions with the CEO that I was having at the time, he was very quick, and he and the team to agree that these were the the right things to be doing. And so we would have those regular conversations. We have crisis management team activated when these things happen, as I'm sure you all do. And we would have those discussions, and everyone was very much on board about doing the right thing by our customers and the community. From a COVID, and that's sort of in a sense more from fires into COVID. And I think the thing about COVID for me is that we were really tried to get on the front foot very early again. So out there with customer offers, if I could describe them as that. So things that we were doing for our customers around data, trying to help customers, the vulnerable customers, people who are on job keeper, job seeker, etc., trying to make provide opportunities for them to get some relief from their bills, etc. We brought on extra employees, so we increased employment. We employed a few extra thousand people. We have during that period of time who are on board now helping out with call centres, because we lost our offshore call centres, which has caused us considerable issues, going from several thousand down to not many people answering phones is a challenge. I think the one thing that I would say about COVID is, I'm sure you've all done crisis management simulation, but simulation, sorry. One of the, every time we went through something else that would happen, we go, no, surely not, because when you go through a simulation, all these sort of stuff that is sort of, theoretically or hypothetically might happen one day, is really never going to happen. Through COVID, it actually did. And, there was one thing after the other happening on a very regular basis, whether it was how we got our techs into homes where people may have been tested for COVID, or into nursing homes where we needed to reconnect them if they were having technical issues and we couldn't actually get them in. So how do we keep them connected? How do we make sure our vulnerable customers still had their connectivity if we couldn't get our techs in? Our customer service call centre issues that we had. There was just so many things that we lived through. At the same time, understanding that connectivity was never more important at this particular point in time. Never more important for everyone, all of you on this call, everyone right across the community, to be able to have that base level of connectivity. And we prepared for scenarios of, whether or not the network, the NBN, etc., could cope with, and we worked very closely with NBN, and thankfully that's been a great partnership, and we've managed to keep the fixed network working very effectively during this period of time. But there were, some real risks that some of those things might have fallen over, but thankfully they didn't. But obviously there was a lot of work behind the scenes to ensure that that was maintained. And our comms strategy was to be very transparent and very open about the things that potentially might happen and the impacts that it might have, even though we were doing everything we could behind the scenes, because we wanted to prepare people along the way, at the same time, as I said, as looking after our customers. Last thing I'd just very quickly say is that internally, again, comms has never been more important for us. We have over 20,000 people working from home, and to keep the level of connectivity that you need to keep up with them during this period of time is even more important than it ever has been before. So our touch points and the internal comms strategy has been significant. Not enough time to talk about all of that here, but a lot different, but very, very important, particularly as we will probably continue to work from home for a long time into the future. So I'll leave it there, Peter, and happy to take any questions later as well.
Nick, you actually gave some interesting comment around what you guys were doing at Telstra with regards to helping newsrooms as well. You want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have been doing a lot of our own content and helping, and of course, from the journo's perspective, it's helping out as much as they can with as we can with things that we can be filming, etc., and helping, because we've got video crews and things like that on our team that we're able to deploy. When we were bringing in people into our call centres from Qantas, people who'd been laid off, etc., we were able to do some interviews and things with them that we could share with some of the media ourselves. So we do a lot of content generation ourselves for both our internal social channels, but also to share out with the media as well. And I know they find that very useful, having our field techs vision of them out doing what they're doing, is something that we do quite regularly. So it's I think it's a good way to help, particularly with the media. I think becoming under increasing pressure to be able to get that themselves. It's good to be able to help out and do that. So we do that quite regularly.
I am going to ask you all to make a final statement, a final comment in regards to what communicators should be thinking about and marketers should be thinking about into the next 6 months. Nick, anything else to add?
I think for me, it's how do you go from crisis to the new normal, and what is the new normal? And I think that's one of the challenges that we're facing is what does that look like? What does it mean? And so we're having lots of discussions about that, certainly at Telstra.